Welcome back, everybody. Another week, another wealth webinar. Today is a special one. We've got a really amazing training we're going to give to you today. And I'm just going to sum it up by calling it track it or stack it. Okay. That's what you got to do. Track it to stack it. Okay. That's what we're going to be talking about. The power of cash flow mapping, I guess, is an easy way to say it. The way I look at this is I'm just going to give you a story. All of you probably will relate to. At one point in your or another in your life, you lived at your parents' house. Remember, all your belongings, for the most part, fit in your bedroom. True? Then you got yourself an apartment. Some of you maybe went right from parents to a house, but let's just natural flow would be you got some type of an apartment. I didn't get an apartment. I rented a room in a buddy's house, and boy, was that fun. But all of my belongings fit in that room. Think about that, right? That was all the way up till like our early 20s. Everything we owned, for the most part, fit in our bedroom and then maybe a little overflow in the garage, but not much. Then all of a sudden you got yourself a bigger apartment and you started acquiring things. You started getting things. And now all of a sudden that apartment started to feel a bit cramped. Stuff just didn't fit. But when you first moved in there, you're like, wow, look at all this space. So much room for activities. But then all of a sudden, as life went on, maybe you got a girlfriend or a boyfriend. Maybe they moved in or started coming over, and then they brought some of their stuff over and then a little more stuff, and it started feeling cramped. Now I'm going to go to a personal story. I remember when it happened. I bought my first house in 2004, maybe it was 2003, and it was my uncle's house. It was about a 13 or 1400 square foot house. And I remember I went from that bedroom at my friend's house to this house. It was so awesome. I remember I had a snowboard room in the basement where all my snowboards and boots and everything were. I thought that was the coolest thing ever. I had stuff spread out everywhere because there was just so much space. I had to go buy new furniture. I had to have new end tables. I went garage sale shopping. How many of you can relate to garage sales, right? Aren't they the bomb? When you're younger, you go to garage sales and you're like, oh, look at that lamp. It's like everybody else's garbage is your new prized possession. And I had my nice little house, but I had so many rooms that weren't used. So I made one into an office, and the other one was just storage of boxes. And then, anyway, what I'm getting at is my girlfriend then moved into my house. And then all of a sudden, all of her stuff went into one bedroom, and then it flowed into another bedroom, and then it flowed into the living room, and then it flowed everywhere else in the house. And all of a sudden, this house did not seem so spacious. And as time went by, and as that girl started, kind of getting more and more accustomed, garage sale shopping, getting things from the family, right? Because remember this, when you move out of your parents' house, at a certain point, usually not long after you move out, they make you go in the attic and take all the stuff from the attic and get it out of their house, right? So then my girlfriend, her parents started dropping boxes of stuff off. And I'm like, okay, well, we'll put them down in the basement. And then they start stacking up. And then you got to find a new place. And you're just like, all of a sudden, the big house seems small. So then we bought a bigger house. But you get what I'm saying, right? This is how we go through life. I'm just talking about homes, apartments, and rooms, right? And the belongings. But this is how money works too. But the problem is we don't track it. Okay, so we lose sight of where our things, i.e. our money is, and then we don't really stack it. Some of you maybe do, but at a younger age, you sort of just make it and you spend it, you make it and you spend it, and then maybe you get a 401k and that's your main savings, right? And I remember when I was young, I would say in my early 20s, I remember I did two things. I set up a mutual fund account and I set up a life insurance policy. Now, those were the first two times I started saving money outside of saving in a little, glass jar or piggy bank or saving a couple bucks in the bank. This is the first time I was legitimately attempting to save. And I remember the mutual fund account was 100 and the life insurance was like 200. Now, oh my God, I was broke. I was going to go broke trying to save. But then you get easier with that, right? Because you're tracking it and you're stacking it. And as you were doing that, you kind of build these things up. But I'm going to stop there because what I want you to think about when you think about that cluttered house. Now, maybe some of you are looking around right now and you're like, yeah, I'm in that house. It's cluttered. right? I want you to think about that cluttered house. And I want you to think about if you moved into a bigger house, would that problem be solved? Yeah, maybe, maybe not. But nonetheless, when you first do it, you'd feel like there's so much space. I'm going to relate this to something that Nelson Nash talked a lot about in the book, Becoming Your Own Banker. And it was called Parkinson's Law. Let me read you what Parkinson's Law says. And it's very simple. It says expenses rise to meet income. Let that sink in and reflect a little bit on your personal life. Expenses rise to meet income. That is, if at a young age you didn't figure out how to start telling your dollars where to go before they decided to go, right? Because of life and the things that you do. And that clutter all of a sudden starts happening more and more in your life. And that clutter in your life is the debts, the expenses, and all the things that clutter your goals up. It's also relative. If you just start to get used to envisioning money in your life, and you start to get used to this thinking that life, and money is abundant and everywhere around you, it's funny, money starts attracting to you. It really does. When you think about money in a positive light, it just attracts itself. I call these the foundational pieces to building wealth, because no one ever, never, ever has built sustainable wealth. Okay, notice there's a difference between being rich and being wealthy. When you're wealthy, you learn how not to give it back. It's the only difference between rich and wealthy. I guarantee you, a lot of you know rich people. How do you spot a rich person? Okay, first, what kind of car are they driving? That's the first way. What kind of clothes are they wearing? They got all the fancy Gucci and all that stuff. The fancy, everything's done up, right? But when you get behind the wheel there, when you get under the hood on a lot of these folks, which, we've seen this, I've seen this as an advisor, the people that look like they're super wealthy, oh my God, they got so much money. Look at that Range Rover. Wow, look at the Gucci. That dude's wearing a Rolex. And you meet with them or you figure out what they've got, and it's just like, whoa, all righty. You got high income, a shit ton of debt, and barely any assets. How many of you know people like that? Right? They're everywhere. But then wealthy people, okay? And this isn't everyone, and I'm stereotyping a bit, but wealthy people are often like the Mark Zuckerbergs, right? That's uber wealth. The dude wears the same t-shirt every day, usually jogging pants. Maybe he's upgraded from that a little bit. I'm sure he drives a nice car, but isn't trying to go out and impress anybody. He has no one to really impress. I mean, he started Facebook. He doesn't have anything to impress, right? That's wealthy. And a lot of times you see differences between rich and wealthy. So it's important that you understand that, because in your pursuit to becoming wealthy, it's more important that you get the fundamentals right. If you've got the fundamentals, then everything else will just fall into place. But if you start with the wrong fundamentals about money, like those folks that I just mentioned, that when you make money, you just spend it to try to look like you have money. I know that sounds stupid, doesn't it? I just said that, and that sounded so absolutely retarded. Like you make money and you spend money to make it look like you have more money. That just sounds so dumb. I'm sorry, I know I'm not supposed to use that other word. It's crazy, isn't it? But isn't that exactly what we're talking about here? That's Parkinson's Law. Parkinson's Law, your expenses rise to meet your income. That's broken. That isn't what you want to do. So first off, real quick, I want to poll the audience since we did it earlier. I want to know, do you feel confident you know exactly where your money goes every month? You have to be honest with yourself, which means you got to be honest with everybody. I often tell people, when you want more out of life, just put things into the universe. Like lately, I've been so burdened with work and just so overrun and overtired and everything else that I'm putting negativity into the world. And it's coming back to me. Now, I want to do a deep dive here real quick, because what we're going to talk about in today's webinar, and it's going to be done by myself, Mr. Stephen Nagy, and Mr. Craig Yenni, okay, the guy who's good in the sheets. But we're going to talk about the financial triple threat. Financial triple threat. And the triple threat is this. It's increasing debt, decreasing savings, and inefficiencies. Do those sound like the makings of a good foundational wealth building strategy? Let me repeat them. The triple financial threat, increasing debt. Is that good for building wealth? Some of you actually on here will say yeah, because you understand you've learned and then unlearned and then learned again. You learned how to ride the backward bicycle. So I know some of you would say increasing debt. Yeah, that's good because I'm the bank. Debt loans are my assets. And they're right. But for the majority of you, increasing debt is not a good thing. Decreasing savings, is that ever a good thing? No. And then being inefficient with the storage of your money, is that a good thing? No. Craig, real quick, I know we've got a really good slide that shows this. Now, all of you are the one percenters. You wouldn't be here if you're not, okay? So I don't need to know who you are. I don't need to know your financial situation. I just know that you're here, which means you're part of the 1%, because that 1% is willing to invest their time, their energy to learn something new. And that's what you're going to learn today. We're going to learn how to switch the gears, how to change the trajectory of where you're going financially. Because one thing I want to show you is I want to show you what the rest of the country looks like. So this is what we're talking about here. We'll get some slides up there, tracking cash flow with confidence, the financial strain on American households. Now, this is not my opinion. This isn't WTF where I'm going off on a rant like I did this morning, but nonetheless, we're not here to talk about WTF, just checking to see who was there. But right here, the Federal Reserve Bank of New York says that household debt hits $18.59 trillion in the third quarter. Mortgage originations tick up. You don't say. That doesn't really mean anything. I think everybody looks at that and says, well, that sounds like a lot of money, but I don't know what it's made up of. So we went the extra step, and Craig put together this, the debt crisis. Now, this isn't the debt crisis that you're thinking. When we talk about debt in today's world, because of the media, we tend to just think of the U.S. national debt, all right? But this is not the U.S. national debt. This is your debt. This is household debt in this country. Mortgage debt, $13.7 trillion. Auto loan debt, and just so you all know, we are hitting record delinquencies in auto loans, okay? Which means it's above 2008's numbers right now. Auto delinquencies, which means repo businesses are going to be crushing it. Auto loan debt, 1.66 trillion. Student loan debt, 1.65. Sorry, I thought everybody's student loans were going to get paid off by the government. I don't know. Where did I miss that? Credit card debt, 1.23 trillion. Stephen, I'm going to go to you specifically. Do you remember, dude, it feels like it was yesterday. We did a wealth webinar just like we are now. And I remember we did an announcement that credit card debt hit $800 billion and we were floored. Do you remember that?
It was not that long ago. And then we were like real excited when it hit $1 trillion. And now you're telling me it's 1.23?
1.23 trillion.
Man, it's
don't worry.
quick.
Don't worry, Stephen. We had record sales on online sales during Black Friday and Cyber Monday. So, I mean, we're doing justice for the debt, right? The credit card debt.
Oh yeah.
Home equity lines of credit. Now this is 422 billion. This is the one number I wish was way higher. Because if there's $13.7 trillion in mortgage debt, but yet there's only 422 billion in people using home equity lines of credit, that means there is so much money sitting in the walls of people's homes. Because the one thing I can tell you that I know with utmost certainty, don't even need numbers to prove this, is all of those people that own mortgages, they're probably sitting on equity right now. Because no matter when you bought your house, unless it was like the last two or 3 years, maybe 2 years, you're probably sitting in equity because prices have gone up. I mean, I know prices are coming back down the other side heavily in Sunbelt states like, Florida, but for the most part, like everybody's got equity in their house. But yet out of 13.7 trillion in mortgage debt, only 422 billion have extracted or taken out the home equity line to have access to that trapped money in their walls, which could be then used to pay off those auto loan debts, which could be then used to pay off those credit card debts at 20%. Follow what I'm saying? These are all things that we teach. Other debt is 550 billion, which I don't know what that is, but it's other debt. And then that's $18.59 trillion. Let that sink in for a little bit. Like, again, let me ask you, do you feel confident you know where your money goes every month? Like literally, like that's a very valid question to ask. Are you confident? Do you have utmost confidence in knowing where your money goes every single month? I mean, you don't have to answer that, but I can tell you the majority of the US does not. They have no idea. So if you owned a business and you got to a place where you literally couldn't answer that question, I have no idea and I do not feel confident that I know where my money goes at your business, what would be the most logical thing you would probably do to fix that problem in your business? Can anyone tell me? You have no idea and you do not feel, there you go, a track audit, right? You would do an audit. Okay. You would audit all your books. You'd audit all your bank accounts. And you'd be like, where the hell is all this money going? We brought in $1 million and there's $2 in the bank account. Like, where's it going? Well, you might come to find out that you're buying more kitty litter than you actually need. Maybe the paper towels are stacking up in the back storage room, but like you would do an audit. It's that simple. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to walk through and do an audit in 60 seconds. Got it? 60 seconds. You can start timing me. I'm going to ask you some questions. And before we start the timer, I need all of you to really pay attention for 60 seconds. That's all I'm asking. If you're at work, just put down what you're doing. Okay? They're not going to take your stapler. Just stop and pay attention. I need you to answer these. First off, okay, 60 seconds starts now. Write down or visualize your monthly income. You got it? Everybody should have a number in their head or on a paper. Number 2, non-negotiables. Every month you have to pay some bills that are non-negotiable, like rent, utilities, groceries. How much do you spend on the non-negotiables? Write it down or visualize it. You don't need to remember any of these. Just write it down or visualize it. Okay? Debt payments. Every month, how much are you writing a check for your debt payments? Okay? Debt payments. Write it down or visualize it. Got it? Discretionary leaks, subscriptions. Nobody's going to probably get this one. All the subscriptions, all the apps your little child buys because these stupid cell phones allow your 2-year-old to buy apps. Yes, they do. All the subscriptions, the eating out, the Amazon, whatever, the Uber Eats. Okay? Write it down or visualize it. And I know you probably don't know the amount. I wouldn't. So just jot down a number you think it is. And most importantly, but last, savings rate. Every month, how much do you save? Write it down or visualize it. Okay, timer off. Did we do that in 60 seconds? Okay, you guys all have some numbers. Most people try to build wealth with a leaky bucket. I just gave you your leaky bucket, and we did it in 60 seconds. Now, what if you just took 5 minutes and you drew a T-chart? On one side, you put all your incomes. On the other side, you put all your expenses and debts and debt payments, right? Like, might take more than 5 minutes, call it 10. Then you'd start getting closer to knowing what this all looks like. And we'll give you a visual in a second. But like the thing that I did, and we did this intentionally, is you notice how the very last thing I asked you was savings. How much money are you saving? How much money are you keeping? Do you know why I put that last? It was very intentional because it should have been first. It should always be first. You should always, always pay yourself first, and then pay everybody else next. And that is not what you're taught. The reason I put savings as the last thing in that 60-second interval is because savings is always last, because you were taught to save what's left, which is completely backwards from a fundamental foundational level of building wealth. You will never, ever, ever get where you want to be financially. Mark my words, never, ever get where you want to be if you put savings last, if you pay yourself last. You must pay yourself first. And I know this seems foreign. You're probably thinking to yourself, you don't even need to say it. You're probably thinking to yourself, there's no way I could save first. I got to pay the bills and whatever's left is what I save. That's why you're struggling. Oh, how did I know you're struggling? Because you just told me you pay yourself last. That's why you're struggling. You are going to have to draw the line in the sand. And we're going to get into this today. You have to draw the line in the sand. You have to do it right now. Nobody's going to buy into this. No one in your family is going to agree with this. So don't ask permission. What you're going to do right here, right now, is you're going to figure out how much you want to be saving. And it's got to be realistic. How much you are saving now. And what I want you to do is I want you to put that first. Every single month before you pay a single bill, before a single bill pay leaves your checking account, the money goes into savings. And I don't care what savings is. I don't care if it's a specially designed whole life. I don't care if it's your Charles Schwab account. I don't care if it's your 401k or just a separate savings account. That money goes into that account first. Now I'm going to challenge you because that's easy because I told you you could do any dollar amount you want. So some of you are like, all right, well, fine. I'll move the savings up to first. It's only like 20 bucks. Great. Next month, you're going to increase it by 10 to 20%. Wow, right? So if you're saving $100 a month, next month, The minimum amount you can save is 110, and you need to do that first before you pay any bills. And every month that goes by for the next 12 months, you are going to increase your savings by 10% minimum. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, that's not even possible, Chris. I wouldn't be able to pay my bills. Good. That's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to get you to understand that you are the golden goose and you matter more than your stupid bills, your stupid payments. I'm not saying go delinquent. Don't not pay them. I'm going to tell you what's going to happen. You're going to start doing this and start with a low number just so it's comfortable. But once you start doing this and you start increasing this every single month, what you're going to find is it's going to become the norm. You're no longer going to think, oh, there's no way I can pay my bills. It's just going to be like, yeah, I certainly can do that. 10% more and 10% more. And I bet you after 12 months, you're going to be saving more money than you ever thought possible. And because in between each one of those increases, you have 30 days to course correct your life. People suck at budgeting, but this exercise works almost every time because it's slow, it's gradual, and you don't even know what you're doing as you're budgeting. Because in order for you to increase by 10% every single month, you're going to have to stick to a firm expense budget. Otherwise, you won't be able to save more. So then it comes down to a point where you need to decide what's more important, paying yourself or paying Bank of America. You're more important than them, right? Please tell me that Bank of America isn't more important than you are. I want all of you to really make a conscious and active effort to make that happen. Most people try to build wealth the backwards way, from a leaky bucket. You need to not do that. You need to plug the leaky holes. We're going to show you how to do it, but that's how you start. Fundamentals, foundations. And I'm going to give you two additional things, and I'm going to turn this over to Stephen and Craig because this is super important. The only way you can increase what you make, the only way you can increase your income in life, pay attention, is to serve more. If you don't serve more, you can't get more. So what you must do, if you make $100,000 a year and you want to make 110, you need to increase your serving 10%. So what do I mean by serving? Solving other people's problems, giving, charity, hugging people, smiling more. I need to do more of that. You need to go out there and you need to give more, serve more, be more to other people's problems. And if you increase that, your income will automatically increase. I can't explain the rest. Let's just say that sometimes you just got to believe there's a higher power, and I promise you that is definitely connected to a higher power. So did everybody get something out of that? Some of you are already thinking, how do I do this? Chris wants me to save. I'm going to take this challenge. I'm going to do it because this is a challenge. I am challenging every one of you. 155 of you just got a challenge. The challenge to pay yourself first. The challenge that every single month you must increase paying yourself first, whatever that dollar amount is. I don't care what it is, but you must increase it by 10%. And in those 30 days between the increase every month, I promise you, you will figure it out. Some of you were going in saying, all right, I can cut this expense. I can cut down these things. I'm going to cancel this subscription. I'm going to reduce my cable. I'm going to call them to negotiate. Listen, I make a lot of money. You know what we did the other day? We called modern garbage disposal and bitched because they didn't pick up our garbage. And we bitched and bitched until we got 250 bucks off. I do the same thing you are all going to do. It doesn't matter how much you make. Good financial fundamental principles never change, no matter how much you make. I know some of you won't believe me this, but I don't walk down a street and not pick up cans. I never, ever allow people to throw a can in the garbage can. I take it out and I take it back and return it for 5 cents. Is it that I need the 5 cents? No, I built habits and I refuse to change them. No matter how many millions of dollars I have, I do the same thing I did when I was dead ass broke because that's what got me where I'm at. And if people laugh at you for that, good. They're the broke ones. They're the rich ones that are pretending to act like they have money. They don't have any money. Craig and Stephen, I'm going to turn it over to you because it looks like now what we've done is we've got the challenge accepted. They all know what we're going to do. Now we just got to pave the way and show them that. So let them have it.
All righty,
boys.
Well, I'll share out some more goodies here. And, Chris, just kind of setting the table here. Some of the folks have been with us for, since the beginning or many, many times being here, we're going back to the basics, aren't we? We're dribbling today, right? We're talking about some of the basics of getting our wealth journey kind of ironed out. So for some of you, it might be repetitive, but these are really important things we're going to talk about. And I'm glad that everyone accepted that challenge because there's more challenges coming. But let me go ahead and share my screen out here. So I love the fact there were some people out there saying, "Well, how do I do this?" And so Chris kind of set the stage on what we're trying to do, but how are we going to do this? And so now what we're going to talk about is, well, you might end up at the end of the month and it's always this vanishing act. Like, where did the dollars go? There's got to be this black hole somewhere where it's just eating all these dollars. And that could be Uber Eats. It could be going out to eat too much. It could be too much recreation. I don't know what it is, but Shauna suggested, excuse me, Shauna suggested we all just hibernate and save money, which is a really cool way of doing it too. But anyway, I want to walk through a couple just fundamentals. And is anyone here kind of putting their own, I guess, financial situation into income statements and balance sheets, whether you have a business or you're just doing this personally? Anybody out there doing this, and let's just say you're not a business owner, but do you have a personal income statement? Do you have balance sheets? Awesome. Good to see some people out there doing it. Because this is really what's going to help us start kind of navigating and figuring out, where's our money going and what should we be doing with our flow of money. So on an income statement, we have our income and expenses. Income could be rental income, dividends, royalties, wages. And where most people's income, comes from is going to be the wages. We're trading that, those hours for dollars. Then we all have expenses because we have to eat, we need a place to live, we pay taxes. But what a lot of people do is neglect the balance sheet of figuring out where, how do we build up assets versus liabilities. Now, I want to walk through personas, if you will. The first person would be maybe somebody that doesn't have a high income. And what their flow of money typically looks like is they get wages, they pay expenses, and the rest goes into this vanishing black hole. So all we're doing every month is we're working, and Chris mentioned this. We're working, we might be buying stuff, maybe we're trying to impress somebody, but we're buying the things we need, the rent, the food, the clothes, and then off to the black hole the money goes. We don't build any assets. Right. Now, there's a second kind of person that maybe they're a high wage earner and their flow of money goes, big paycheck comes in as far as income. But what do we do when we earn big chunks of income? Well, we buy more stuff. Maybe we go buy a boat. Maybe we have more subscriptions, join the country club. What we end up doing is we add to our liabilities. And so all of that money just kind of flows from wages right into the liabilities, mortgages, car loans, you name it, boats, campers. And then we pay expenses out, and then everything goes into the black hole. So here we are, just money disappearing again. So one of the things we want to think about is as we rearrange and we try to get the income statements and the balance sheets in order, we want to start thinking about assets. What assets will produce more income for us so that we're not the sole income producer, meaning our wages, we're trading time for dollars. How can we get stocks, property, intellectual property, notes, real estate making money for us? Now, before we can do that, we have other things we need to accommodate and get under control. If you don't have income, you're not doing the savings challenge Chris just talked about, you don't have emergency funds, all of those things. That's what we want to spend some of our time talking about today. But this is kind of the end goal, this picture. We want to get those assets building income. So for some of you that said, hey, how do I do this? Just insert your name in here. And Chris has already touched on some of this, but put your name in there. How does Craig fix this? How does Steven fix this? I'm just looking at some names out there. How does Arnold fix this? How does Joe fix this? And Chris shared Parkinson's law, and that is one of the things we need to just be aware of because throughout our life, we're going to be at a job. We're going to make more money, right? And yes, Marco, that's very similar to the Rich Dad, Poor Dad quads that I just showed. But as we earn more income, as we serve more people, like Chris said, and we start to earn more income, We need to be aware that we don't want those expenses coming up, chasing us. So we get the fancier car, we get the bigger house. And so those are the things we need to be aware of. And I found this Benjamin Franklin quote the other day. I thought was just, appropriate for our conversation today is just be aware of those little things that kind of add up because a small leak will sink a big ship over time. And what we mean by that is we just don't have anything left at the end of the month. All those little leaks that we have in our finances are going to sink our ship. So we're not going to spend the whole time talking about all the bad stuff like, oh, this is the debt's out of control, the savings sucks, the savings rates are low. What do we do? And most of the people on this call today, I mean, you're already here. You're changing your mindset about money. And Chris, there's a lot of things, Chris and Steven and I, we talk about this all the time. Like, what should your mindset be about money? How do you pay yourself first? And everybody, 150 some people just said they're accepting the challenge to pay yourself first and build wealth. Part of what we want to talk about today is the rest of the stuff. How do I start tracking my income and expenses? What are some of the tools I can use? How do I start to build emergency funds? How do I bring consistency to my monthly cash flow? And what I mean by that is, and I have a quote later on, but what if a big expense comes up? What if you have some medical emergency or your car breaks down, your engine blows? That's not something you are planning in your monthly cash flow. So how do we accommodate those types of things? We want to get out of debt, build assets and passive income, just like that picture I just showed. So one of the quotes, I like Zig Ziglar. I don't know if anyone else is out there is a Ziggy fan. Any Zig Ziglar fans out there? Just put Zig in the comments. Love to know you're out there. But yeah, I really like reading his stuff. He was just a neat guy. But he's got a quote out there that says, "You were born to win. But to be a winner, you must plan to win, prepare to win, and expect to win." So some of that plan to win, that's your mindset, right? So you have to have the mindset that you're going to win, but you can't just pretend that you're going to win. You have to actually do preparation. You have to put the work in to win. And then just have to expect to win. And when you see expect to win, there's going to be problems, there's going to be roadblocks, there's going to be challenges in this whole journey, but you have to expect to win and just push through those things. We can't give up the first time something goes off the rails or something breaks. That's why I like this quote so much. It's got a lot of meaning to it. All right, so now we're going to get into the whole how are we doing this? And here we are in December of 2025. And what is something that most people do when January comes around? Stephen, do you have any ideas? What comes around January 1st? People have this thing called New Year's resolutions, right?
Oh yeah, we've been talking about it, man. Everybody's ready to take action, make a change in their lives. You go to the gym, it's completely full of people. We get pretty busy in our business, because people are
Yeah.
like, oh, wait till the holidays, and then they jump on it. So yeah, man, a lot of New Year's resolutions and action, it seems.
A lot of good intentions, going to the gym. Kaya says going to the gym. We want to get our finances in order, maybe improve some relationships, whatever it's going to be. But we always have to think, and I'm going to kind of, scope in on the whole fitness thing because to me, I think fitness and finances have a lot of parallels here. And if we're trying to get in better health, we're trying to lose some weight, don't we need to monitor and measure the things that we're doing? Don't we need to kind of track our exercise? Stephen, I know you do some running, and I know Chris does running and swimming. And I mean, are
Yep.
you using any sort of tracking device? Use MyFitnessPal or for food or Strava or any of that type of stuff?
I do use Garmin Connect.
Yeah.
I use this little bugger. Whoop. I love that thing every day.
The whoop. Yep. And you can swim with that one, I assume, get it all wet and just jump in the lake like you do.
Oh yeah. Yeah, just wear it on
Yep. Yep. And Kai mentions stop eating like it's Super Bowl every day. And I have to I have to say over Thanksgiving, we went to the store and got the big block of Velveeta and made queso. And it's just disgusting to think about this big old block of Velveeta. We polished it off. But anyway, the similarities are we want to think of our fitness tracking just like we do with our finances because if we're not tracking our food and I was using MyFitnessPal for a while because I really wanted to track the carbs and the proteins and the fats and just kind of get an idea of my eating habits. But can't we do the same thing with our finances? We're going to be looking at income and expenses. Isn't that kind of similar to the calories in and out for our bodies? So there are fitness apps that we can use, and there's also financial applications we can use. But it really comes down to taking the initiative to get these things set up in our lives, start using them so that we can have something more than just a goal. We can actually act on it. We can start working with it. So, as you think about weight gain, loss trends, meal prep, there's budgeting with finances, there's cheat days, impulse spending, your personal trainer, fitness tools, you can have a financial coach, advisor, money mentors. So there's a lot of parallels here. So let's move on because as we start tracking, and I just pulled some of my own stats here off of, I think this one's Strava and some of my Fitness Pal. But it's kind of cool when you start getting numbers because look, at the end of the day, you're eating breakfast, you're eating lunch, but I couldn't tell you at the end of the day, I'm like, did I do a good job eating today? And when I was tracking it, I'd look and go, man, I didn't eat enough protein today, or I ate way too many carbs. And so you can start to make adjustments, and that's what we want to do. And I'm going to relate this back to Chris's challenge that everybody accepted. If you can start putting away some of that money in your savings, and then he said next month try to up that, by 10%. What if you can't? We're like, oh man, I don't know where the money's going. But what if we were dialing in so we knew exactly where that money was flowing, or we knew exactly the kind of foods we were eating and we're not getting the results we want? So it's all about tracking and just getting that visibility. So that's what I want to talk about is getting the diagnostics. You ever been to the doctor? You go in with a certain issue. Well, they got to do the diagnosis. Does it hurt if I, push here or tap there? Same thing with our money. Where does our money go? And here's just a question. And if you have the answer, great. If I asked you right now, how much do you typically spend on going out to eat every month? Would you be able to answer that question? If you can, just put I. Actually, if you can't, put no. I want to see how many people wouldn't be able to answer that. So if I said, how much do you spend going out to eat every month? If you don't know, just put no. So Chris knows how much, some people do, some people don't. But this is the cool thing about tracking this stuff is you can then say, well, gosh, maybe I'm going out to eat more. And to Shauna's point earlier, let's hibernate and save. Maybe we don't go as drastic as hibernating like a bear would, but maybe we say, you know what, over the holiday season, I'm going to not go out to eat once a week like I usually do every Friday. Maybe I'm going to skip a Friday or two. And right there, I would bet you could probably save 20, 30, 40, $50 depending on who's going with you. How much do you spend on groceries? How much do you spend on anything? And so I'm not a big budget person per se, because what most people do with budgets is they'll say, well, I've got utilities, I've got heating, I've got, gas, I've got groceries, and they just kind of put a number on it and they try to work within that number. But unless you're tracking this stuff in real time and you know what you're spending, the budget becomes kind of a flimsy plan. All right. So now I know there's some people out there going, yeah, but wait a minute, wait a minute, wait a minute. Isn't this going to take a long time to set up? And Stephen, I know you and I were talking about this. You reached out at one point, like, hey, what are you using for tracking stuff? And I think you set up Quicken, didn't you?
Yes, that's right. Correct.
And did it take you hours to do so?
No, it's actually really easy.
Yeah, and so I was kind of thinking about this, and I don't know, has anyone gotten a new phone recently? I got a new laptop recently and had to go through this. I mean, there's some cool tools where it can take your old data and bring it over and do all those things, but there's still a lot of the customization. So I don't know how much time I spent setting up this new laptop. If you get a new phone, probably 3 hours, maybe even more. A lot of people spend 3 to 5 hours doom scrolling on Facebook or whatever it's going to be.
Yeah.
So my whole thing is I'm thinking phone setup, couple hours, social media doom scrolling 3 hours a
Yeah.
day, or you could, take a couple hours and I think this is probably more than you would need, but I use Quicken and or if there's Rocket Money or any of those other tools. What if you took 2 hours some point this weekend, maybe towards the end of this week, and you said, I'm going to download one of these tools. I'm going to get this thing set up because I want to have great financial hygiene. I want to be just like I'm tracking my health metrics. I want to track my financial metrics. Is it worth 2 hours to do something like that? I think it is. All right. So I just want to share, you might look at some of these graphs and go, oh my gosh, Craig's showing me something from January of 2016 through January of 2017. Well, the reason I picked on these dates is I've been tracking every dollar with Quicken. I used to use Microsoft Money, but at some point I changed over. But look, at the beginning of the day, every day, I just sync my numbers. So all of my numbers go into Quicken, and then I can look at reports like this to say, what is my cash flow? What's my income compared to my expenses? And if I'm trying to increase my savings, I now want to go in with a laser and try to figure out where is it that I'm spending money where maybe I don't need to. And then I can make some decisions and go, well, my savings isn't where it needs to be, or I'm not preparing for my future, but I'm putting a lot of money into this thing and maybe I should do less. So it's just one of those things, and I'm not even saying you have to cut back on this thing or that thing, but you will have the information to do so. And yeah, Lowell, Monarch's another one. There's a lot of great tools out there. I've just been using Quicken just because I've been using it for years. I'm gonna share with you in a minute what I'm doing with it because it gets a little more complicated. But just think about how you can carve this information up. So you can put it in pie graphs, you can put it in tables, and you can see like where's the biggest chunk of my money going. And back in 2016, most of it was what I called my escrow. And I'm going to share a little bit about this escrow thing. So most of my money was going into this escrow account, then my home mortgage, and then groceries, and then I had kids' activities, dance, basketball, whatever it's going to be, and some dining, and so anyway, you can kind of see where the major categories are. Now, if all of a sudden I said, well, I need to figure out a way to get some more money, I'm probably not going to take it out of my escrow, and I'll tell you why in a minute. Probably can't do much with my mortgage. Do I not eat as much in terms of groceries, or do maybe clip some coupons, or maybe some of the kids' activities are gone? Not really. For me, it probably would have been the dining. I would have just gone for that and said, I'm just not going to do that anymore, and I can free up some cash. But those are the kinds of things I can make decisions on. And then utilities, I think, are an interesting ones. I live in Colorado, so we have times where it's hot, we have times where it's cold. I have times where I need to water my yard, and sometimes I don't need to water my yard. So based on water, gas, and electricity, they're always going up and down. And so what I wanted to do was look at, just like in a business, think about a business. If we can normalize expenses, which means I don't want these big waves of expenses and I'm not prepared to pay a big bill this month. I want to normalize that stuff. And so I'll show you what I end up doing with this escrow concept. But once you know your electric, gas, water, all of those things, you just add them up, and then I can say, well, it's X amount per year, divide by 12. That's what I need to save every month to make sure I've got the ups and downs taken care of. Do the same thing with dining, on and on and on. Now, here's where we want to take some action. And what I would say is in order to fulfill the commitment that you all made that you're going to save and you're going to increase that savings over time, we need to take action on tracking our leaks in our system. We want to start getting laser focused on where our money's going. All right. So what are we going to do? We're going to download Rocket Money. We're going to download Quicken, QuickBooks if you're business owners. We're going to find a tool out there that works for us. So what I want to know is everybody on this webinar ready to take action? And I don't care what tool you pick, just find a tool that works for you. And so over the next couple days, maybe throughout the weekend, find a tool, set up your bank accounts, set up your credit cards, and do the downloads. And once you do the downloads, you can go and start building some transactions so you can make it, as customized as you want. For me, I customize everything in terms of, these are groceries, this is auto fuel, these are all the things. So now we had 100 and some 150 people accept the savings. Can I see again, are you willing to accept the challenge to start tracking your money and plugging those financial leaks? And if you're on board with that, just put accept in the comments and let's see if everyone's going to get on board here. So it's good to see now that the vault track all of your individual expenses, but you would want to then take that information, and I'm going to show you in a minute kind of how that relates. But Celeste, you want to find out what those expense categories are. Then we put that in the vault for the velocity banking piece. So that's awesome to see that many people going down the path of accepting this challenge. Now, here's the whole part. Remember in Zig Ziglar's comment is you need to expect to win. We're all ready to go do the savings. We're ready to start tracking our cash. And guess what? Something is going to happen. A car is going to break down. A medical thing is going to happen. A kid's going to break an arm. So what I want to do is I want to start thinking about how do we prepare for those unplanned big expenses? Because we don't want it crashing our cash flow. I don't want those cash flow crashers. They're going to happen, but how do we mitigate that and how do we build a plan to support that? So here are some things that I want everyone to think about, and we need to maybe do a little quick working session on this. But groceries, we have groceries every month. We have heating bills every month. We have fuel for our cars pretty much every month. What I want you to start thinking about in your specific situation is what are all of your non-monthly bills? So you have birthdays, mom, dad, kids, there's holidays. We have Christmas right around the corner and people are probably going to overspend on that. You may have car insurance monthly, or maybe you set it up every 6 months, maybe every year. You can save some money that way. So here's a list of non-monthly bills. What else can you think of in your specific individual situation that's a non-monthly bill that's actually pretty substantial that you need to plan for? You have anything else out there? And one of them for me is I've got all of my policies on annual premium. So all of my policies come up and they're due. I've got one actually due this month and it's all annual. So I plan for that throughout the year and I set the money aside for that. Health insurance, dental, acupuncture, medical, oh, pets. Yeah, that's a big one. That's a big one. Clothes. Yeah, if we could figure out how to keep the kids from growing so much, that would be a good way to do it.
Dude,
Sports.
that's a real thing, man. Like I just last night,
Yep.
Larissa went through all Vivi's clothes. Like I can't believe how fast kids grow out of sizes and how expensive it is to keep changing these sizes. Man, that's a budget killer.
Let's talk about kids' shoes.
Yeah.
Forget it, man, especially when you have a kid that wants to be in style. All right, keep going.
Yeah, and the problem is they keep eating, so then they keep eating, they keep growing. So maybe that's part of the challenge there. But anyway, if you want to grab a screenshot of this or add to your list, but part of your homework is going to be start figuring out what those things are for you so they don't become surprises when they hit. And I want you all to make that list and then figure out when they're coming in and how much they are. All right, so that's some homework for you. So why do I want you to do this? I've got this thing called an escrow calculator. It's something that I used to use. I don't use it as much anymore because I have an all-in-one HELOC, first lien HELOC, and I just run everything into that. But think of it this way, and I'm happy to share this calculator with you. Here's what I'll say is if you want this calculator, send me an email, and Stephen, I don't know if you can just put this in the chat for everybody, just Craig@chrisnaugle.com. If you do request the calculator, just put escrow calculator in the subject line. Give me some time if you send that to me just to get it sent back out to you. But here's what this thing does. After you've identified all of those non-monthly bills that are substantial enough to where you need to plan for them, then what you'd want to do is go in and start putting in the dollar amounts and when. So in January, for example, we spend $150, let's say, on Goldie's birthday. In February, I have homeowners association dues, and then I also have my home taxes. My first half of the house taxes are due, and then we might have an insurance premium, for Goldie's policy. So anyway, you get the idea. You want to go through and put all those expenses in there, and just give a quick description of what they are. What that's going to do is it's going to total up all the expenses. So I have about $23,815 of non-monthly expenses I need to accommodate for the year. So what this calculator is going to do is it's going to tell me that I need to be saving $1,984.65 every month. I put that into my escrow. So do you remember in that pie chart that I shared with everybody, escrow was the biggest portion of my budget back in 2016 and 2017? This is why, is because I have all these non-monthly bills and I need to save $1,984 every month. Because if I do that, I'll always have enough money to pay that $6,000 premium when it's due. I'll have enough to pay my home taxes when it's due. I just have to be diligent about putting that money in um, every time every month it comes up. So anyway, that's what I'm doing with the escrow calculator. So if you want that, send me the email, craig@chrisnaugle.com, and just put in the subject line escrow calculator, and I'll get that out to you. Okay, so here's the other piece: emergencies and unplanned expenses. Car repairs, medical bills, job loss, broken phones, pet injuries, appliance repairs, replacement. And you might have, other things in your life that have happened that have been emergencies or unplanned expenses that just ruin the monthly budget. And I found this stat on Bankrate, and it said 56% of Americans can't cover a $1,000 emergency with savings. And so the whole idea is we don't want to be like this. We don't want an emergency or an unplanned expense to knock us off our rocker, to impact our savings, impact our wealth building. And so for you, another piece of homework is to think through what are some of the emergencies I've had in the past? What have they been? We can't predict the future, but at least you can kind of think about what an emergency fund should look like. And Arnold, I see the comment, do you put this escrow money in a high yield savings account? That's exactly what I used to do, but what I'm doing now is I'm keeping that in my first lien HELOC. Now, the other thing you can do is, we talk about becoming your own banker. We talk about specially designed whole life policies. That is a great place to store your emergency savings. If you are using your specially designed whole life policy for your emergency savings, we just need to make sure that we're not using that for opportunities. We're not using that for, buying major purchases. We always keep that reserved, and it's only used, that portion is only used if there's an emergency. So you could use a high yield savings account. You could use your first lien HELOC as your storage place. You could use your specially designed whole life policy, but you just need to make sure you don't take that out if you're going to buy a car or do an investment. All right, let's move on to the next thing. So here's what we're going to do. We're taking action. Some of the homework pieces, you're going to identify those non-monthly bills because that's what's going to feed into your escrow account. And we're going to start thinking about building an emergency fund. And the thing that's going to help that is think about what are some of those past emergencies that you may have had, and that'll kind of help you think, well, should I keep 3 months of 6 months, whatever that's going to be. And Arnold says, can you expand on the HELOC? We do have some trainings out there about first lien HELOCs, and essentially what a first lien HELOC is it kind of takes your mortgage and puts it into a line of credit. So for me, I've got the ability to use my equity and then pay it back and use it and pay it back and use it. So it's another line of credit that gives me more control over how my money's used. So I've got money sitting in my first lien HELOC, and if an emergency comes up, well, no problem. I just take it right out of my equity and I'll pay it right back with income and investments. But there's a lot more details to the first lien HELOC. And Steven, I don't know if you have any of those sessions we did from August that maybe you could just post out there. We had CMG. We did an entire month of wealth webinar on first lien HELOCs. So
Yeah, let me see what I can find.
yeah,
I'll
so it might be
jot
just kind of throw that in there. All right. So I want to jump into a couple of things that we want to talk about in terms of getting our financial footing in a better place. And one is, if you have debt, bad debt, let's say you've got car loans, you've got student loans, similar to what we showed earlier, there's trillions of dollars of auto loans, trillions of dollars of student loan debt out there, credit cards. And what we want to do is get a plan to how we get out of that debt in the most efficient way. So before I move on, I just want to ask the audience, if you have third-party debt that you need to get rid of, just go ahead and put debt in the comments. I just want to see how many folks are with us to see how applicable this is. Here's what I'd encourage you to do. Go out to this link that I'm showing here, https://byobvault.com. And on that site, I'm going to switch over and go to that real quick here. So at byobvault.com, you will see on the home page a page just like this. You don't even need to subscribe or log in to do what I'm going to show you, but what I want you to do is two things. One is there's a Debt Blaster trifecta video here. Watch that just so you can understand the approach of how you can use a three-pronged approach of sequencing your debt, which is take that along with net banking and velocity banking to get out of debt with efficiency, wealth building, and speed. Now, if you want to get in and just play around, these wouldn't necessarily, be your numbers, but you can come in and play with some demo data. We have, a set of data here, credit cards, medical debts, car loans, and if you want to turn some of these off, maybe you don't want to look at the mortgage and the home equity. So you've got about $78,000 of debt. You're paying about $1,265 a month in debt payments. You can come down and just kind of play around with these numbers and see what would it look like if you did nothing but just pay each debt off one by one. It would take about 181 months to pay that debt off, and you'd pay another $30,000 of interest on $78,000 of debt. Now, if you were to use either the snowball, the avalanche, or cash flow index, it'll show you that you're going to be a lot more efficient. Instead of 181 months, it takes you 80 months to get rid of that debt. Instead of paying 30,000 in total interest, you're paying 22,000. So this is one way, and it just takes discipline. We're not asking for, in this approach that you're adding any more money to the equation. You're not doing anything but just being disciplined of when this personal credit card is paid off, we're taking that $75, we're adding it to the business credit card that's already paying 125. So we're adding that 75 on, and we just keep stacking and taking that money and stacking each debt payment until they're all gone. Now, if you want, and we're not going to go into this in great detail today, but if you want to see some examples of how an infinite banking strategy would work with debt, we have 4 different sample policies here. Some with dump-ins, one with 1,000 a month, one with no dump-in, 500 a month. So you can kind of just play around with this. And if this is something you want to dig into more, we have a lot of training on that. You can schedule a call with our money mentors, and Stephen can put the link in the chat if you wanted to talk with someone about this approach. But you could come in and say, well, what would it look like if I had a policy where I'm taking $500 of my cash flow and putting it into a policy, then taking loans from the policy while it's compounding and growing and leveraging it for debt? So what you do is you come in and activate this cash value boost, and then it shows you how quickly you're paying off the debts, how much cash value you have at the end. Again, this is not your data, but you can get familiar with the concepts. And then the last thing would be to kind of play around with the velocity banking strategy. So anyway, I would encourage everybody to just go out. If you don't already have a subscription to the Vault, just come in and play with this, and also watch this video. And then if this is something you wanted to do, you could go, of course, and subscribe. All right, so I'm going to jump back into the slides. Now, the thing is, we want to talk about as we're saving. Chris has got the challenge out there to get you to save more. As we start tracking our money and we know where those leaks are, we've plugged those leaks. We're now saving more. We've paid off our debt. We now want to think about how do we start wealth building and how do we do investing and get to that next level. And we've got the private money club. There's a lot of different approaches out there, but Chris always says, find something you know, like, and understand. The last thing you want to do is just jump into some specific investment that you don't really understand and you end up losing money. That's the last thing we want to do. We want to think about, are you into real estate, or maybe you want to invest more in your own business, or whatever that's going to be. Find out what that's going to be, spend time getting educated on it, and just become an expert in it. What we want to do is start building more cash flow. What we're trying to do at this point is we've now built up savings. We've got some cash available. We're covering our emergencies. We have our cash flow kind of under control. Now we want to start, putting our money to work. So we're not the only ones going to work. Our money's going to work too. So those little dollars are going to put their boots and hat on and get out the door and start making some more money. And this is just a suggestion. You don't have to go this route, but a lot of us in this community, I'm sure a lot of you out there are part of the private money club. That's where real estate deals get done, where people looking for money find people that have money to invest. They do the deals, and it's a win-win for both sides. We do a lot of live events, and we can share some more about that. We do virtual events, but it's really about building connections. And I'm sure a lot of the people on this webinar today is like, we all know each other. I saw, Dex and Christian early on talking. I always love seeing that stuff, how the community just knows each other and shares information. So that's what we want to do as a next step. And what I want to do is I'm going to share a little bit about my approach. Now, Stephen does things differently than I do. Chris will do things differently than I do. Other people on our team do things differently. We have some very similar overlaps, but we all kind of do things differently. And I'm going to share kind of the approach I've been using for years, which is I have a warehouse of cash. You can also have a warehouse of cash. Mine happens to be made up of whole life policies and my all-in-one first lien HELOC. Now, what's going on behind the scenes there is this warehouse of cash, I get uninterrupted compounding in my whole life policies while I can leverage it. I get long-term appreciation in the policies as well as my all-in-one. So those things are going to continue to grow and appreciate over time, regardless of whether I'm leveraging my equity or I'm leveraging my policies. I've also set this up to where I have an opportunity fund. And what I mean by that is if something comes across, we're like, hey, that's a really neat opportunity. It looks like it's in the wheelhouse of what I want to do. I can then deploy some of those funds to go take advantage of that deal. You may not be able to get to this right away, but I've been doing infinite banking for 16 years. My oldest policy is 16 years old. We want to get to the point where we can self-finance or we don't need the banks anymore. If you want to use the banks, great, but if it's nice to be at the point where you don't need to do self-finance, you don't need to do financing with a bank. So one of the goals is you can self-finance. You need a car, you take it out of your own system. You want to go on a big vacation, you take it out of your own system. And then the other thing this system does is it builds an emergency fund. So for me, I don't ever 100% leverage my policies or my all-in-one. I just won't. I never will. I can't sleep at night if I do. And so I want to come up with a strategy where I can deploy and then still have opportunity funds and emergency funds. I came up with this on a call the other day, just rattled it off, and like the whole idea is build, protect, and pass it on. So I want to build as much wealth as I can in a safe way. I want to protect it. And then when I'm done here on this earth, I want to be able to pass it on. And so that's really what my strategy has been. And so I've got a few more slides and then we can kind of wrap this up. But here's what I do. I always, and I say I always do, I will never 100% leverage everything I have, but I will always maintain opportunity funds in my warehouse. I will maintain emergency funds in my warehouse, and I'll be able to finance my own major purchases from my warehouse. So what we want to do is get you to that point where you don't need to rely on the traditional banks. You can use whole life policies, specially designed whole life policies. You can use home equity. So those two tools are the foundations of what I've been doing to do this. Now, when I deploy capital, here's what I do. I'm always looking at different measurements of how much capital is clear of any warehouse loans. So let's say that I take a loan for my policy and put it into a private lending deal. And then I want to do another private lending deal, but I feel that I'm too leveraged. I won't do that deal until I get some of that loan cost paid down. So I have a specific percentage that I work off of where I'm not going to deploy more than X because I want to keep opportunity funds, emergency funds, and enough for major purchases. So that's one of the things I measure. And then I also measure this thing called capital at risk, which means I have an example down at the bottom here. So let's say we have $100,000 of capital deployed in a private lending deal. Let's just say over time I've received $50,000 back of interest. Well, that means if I have deployed 100 and I have 50 back, I still have 50 at risk. So I have 50% of my capital at risk. Now, when you first start doing deployments, of course, all of it's going to be at risk because you just started. But over time, you might come up with some of your own metrics to say, hey, when is it time to deploy more money? And if you've paid enough back to your warehouse, maybe it's time to deploy more. So those are just some of the ways that I operate. I'm always looking at how much do I have leveraged, how much is at risk, and then that helps me drive if I want to put more out there or not. So this is how it's all measured. I love spreadsheets. I love this stuff. It's great, but one of the things I'm using is Quicken, and I know others out there, Monarch, Rocket Money, QuickBooks. There's a lot of different tools out there, but what I do is I've connected all my personal bank accounts, business bank accounts, personal credit cards, business credit cards, brokerage accounts, my HELOC, and I also have some things called manual accounts where sometimes I'll make some journal entries there. But every day, and this is what I want everyone to get to, is every day just sync that stuff into your tool of choice. For me, it's Quicken. I now can tell you, you know, every credit card swipe. I can tell you every check that was written, whatever it is, it's all in here. Now, there's a lot of really great reporting in Quicken, but it doesn't give me what the level of detail that I want. So what I do is I export the raw data out into a spreadsheet. I know some of you are probably shocked to hear that I'm putting this in a spreadsheet, but I put the raw data in a spreadsheet and then I build reports. I have something called a living financial statement. It just tells me like today, how does life look? And then the beautiful thing is when it's tax time, I just print off my P&L, a profit and loss statement, give that to my accountant. I print off my balance sheets, give that to my accountant. Well, I've been doing this all throughout the year, tracking everything, so it's just very easy. And then from an investment perspective, I'm always watching capital risk, capital clear, capital out working. But all of these things are being done through customized spreadsheets. So you may not go to that level, but I'd say if you can at least get things into a Quicken or a Rocket Money, you're going to be a lot further down the road than a lot of folks. You're going to plug those leaks. We're going to be able to expand our savings and do a lot of cool stuff. So just a couple quick examples of how you can leverage the warehouse of cash in a safe way. Now you might want to be a little more leveraged than what I'm sharing, but that's fine. Let's say we're at ground zero. We just got rid of all of our debts. We have some policies. Maybe we have some equity. And whatever the number is, this might be $10,000. This might be $5,000. This might be 300,000. Don't get caught up on the numbers. Think about the process of what's going on here. So let's just say I take $100,000 out of my warehouse and I find a private lending deal. Maybe Steven's doing a fix and flip or something. I'm going to fund it. Steven says, "Hey, Craig, I'll tell you what, loan me the 100,000. I'll put you in first lien position and I'll pay you 12% annualized, which means I'm going to get $1,000 a month back from Steven while he's doing this deal." Now, every month, $1,000 is coming back into my warehouse of cash. And if I just wanted to say, how long will it take for Steven to pay back 100,000? Well, let's say it takes 8 years. But the reality is, if you're using, say, velocity banking and all-in-one strategy, and you took 100,000 out of your warehouse, you could potentially pay that down a lot faster based on your specific income and expenses. But let's just say worst case, it takes 8 years to clear that 100,000. So what is my goal? Deploy 100,000 to make more money, and it takes 8 years to pay it all back. Well, that's cool. Now in 8 years, I've got my 100,000 back, and let's say I've still got 100,000 out there working at 12%. Well, let's deploy another 100. So remember, my warehouse was made whole. Now I'm going to take another 100, so I have 200,000 out working, and now I have $2,000 a month coming back into my warehouse. Well, now I'm going to get that done in 4 years. I'm going to be able to pay that 100 back in 4 years because I have 200 paying that 100 back. So you can see the path here. It starts really, really slow, but trust me, if you stick with this, if you stick with it, it will get better and better and better because it's that first chunk of money that you have to free up that's going to take the longest. Now we're showing 200 is paid off in half the time. Maybe at some point you get 500,000 out there working, you have 5,000 a month coming back into your warehouse. Now it's getting paid back in, 1.5 years or so. But the whole thought here is that we want to deploy money. Maybe you want to deploy faster than what I'm showing here. no problem. Maybe you want to deploy less than I'm showing here, that's fine too. But the concept is deploy, get that money out working, have it pay itself back, deploy again, and just keep building that pile, that big old chunk of money that's out working. Because ultimately, the more we can get of this, the less we have to be concerned about going to work every day and making that. Because now our little green dollars have their tennis shoes on and their work gloves and they're pulling the wagon, making the money for us.
Did you want to mention, Chris, the advanced services a little bit?
Yeah, so I was chatting with somebody, by the name of Anonymous, but we had a great conversation, brought up something really, really cool. And one of the things that, I wanted to kind of announce to everybody here, it's not something new, it's something we've been doing. We just don't promote this, but it is available, is, a lot of folks, they just have advanced needs, right? They might be doing stuff for a foundation or for a charity, and they want to know, hey, how can IBC work within my charitable organization? Or other people just have large estates, or they're just dealing in bigger numbers and they want bigger and more advanced strategies that the vault and the advanced markets team could solve. So listen, like, I'll just put it out there to all of you. We got 127 of you left. If any of you like have been thinking like, hey, I'd really like to work with Craig and the advanced markets team because my situation is more advanced, is a little bit different, is something that needs a little bit more attention, a little bit more planning kind of work. So that's what is a perfect fit for advanced markets. Now, Craig, if you can, I think you might have already, could you put the advanced markets link up there to book a call? I know I didn't prep you for this, but I was just talking to two different people, both that, have been around the campfire for a while, that have had discussions with other mentors. And they're just like, my situation's unique. I just need a little bit more planning. And that's really what it is. The advanced markets team was put together for exactly this. Craig, how long have we been doing the advanced markets team? It's over a year now.
I'd say over a year. Yeah, I mean, we've been unofficially doing it for well over a year.
And we,
There's been some really fun cases that we've worked together.
And
So,
these are the cases that sometimes like literally go on for months. It's like there's super, advanced plannings. Estate planning, for example, is one of them, or corporate planning. Like you want to instill this into your company and do it for key employees, or buy-sell agreements, or deferred compensation arrangements, or anything along those, even as fancy as 412(e)(3) pension structures. Like those are all things that fit the advanced markets. But you know what? Some of you are like, oh, I don't really need any of those. But maybe you just got a unique situation. Or maybe you're looking at putting larger dollar amounts into a policy. These are all things that would fit the advanced markets. So this is the first time we've ever brought it to the public. And we don't really need to, because we have lots of people that we kind of, help in this division. But I wanted to make sure, because of the two conversations I had, that all of you had access to our advanced markets team and Craig right there. So there's the email, there's the call link. So the two that I've been speaking to, that would be how you'd book a call with advanced markets. And then there's another person that says something really fun. They were looking for kind of like just an advanced kind of just almost like mastermind session. And I was like, all right, well, so I told them to send me an email. And what we'll do is we'll set up like just a little round table kind of thing, talking about these really advanced plannings. I do this. I actually have a call tomorrow with a guy who owns the largest bank in one of the parts of Texas. I can't give you the name of the bank, but those are the kind of people that some of you want to be around, that some of you want to kind of meet with. Now, it's not for everybody, and I want to preface that. Like these are unique scenarios, that we help people with. We don't bring them to the public, but the hell, there it is, advanced markets, and then I'll address the other emails personally. So there we are.
perfect. All right. Well, we've definitely given people some challenges, saving challenges, tracking your cash challenges, and so it's time to act at this point. So,
What do you say, Stephen? What else we got going on? Don't we have something coming up? Like we just did a crazy Black Friday sale. Do you want to announce that? Well, we got a minute left.
Yes. So I don't have the links in front of me, but we do. So if you guys have been following your emails, we are relaunching one of our foundational trainings that we haven't done in over a year. So those of you that have been around the campfire, you remember we used to do what's called our Money School Essentials 3-day virtual training event. This past year, we did a kind of an advanced IBC 2-day virtual event, much different than what the 3-day was. And some of the materials in the 3-day we now kind of talk about with private money club and those of you that attend like the money tank events in person. So what we decided to do was take the best of our money school essentials 3 day, the best parts of the advanced 2 day IBC training, and the best pieces of Money Tank, bring it all together into one 3 day training program. It's going to be virtual, so you can watch it from the comfort of your own home right here, just like this on Zoom. But it will be 3 days. They will be long days, but they're going to be full of essential information, knowledge, strategies, training, everything to take back control of your money, solve your money problem, and really put you in charge of what the future looks like. And I'm super excited for it because, we've been doing this now for about 5 years. So it's given us a lot of insight into, what works. So how can we share all of this knowledge that I've had for the last almost 20 years being in the financial education industry? Chris has been doing for 20, 25 years. Craig and everything that he does, being able to show exactly how this stuff works and what he just talked about on this training, things like how do we bring that to in a way that makes sense, where somebody that's brand new, that comes from a traditional investing background, just like working with financial advisors or 401ks, or maybe just putting some money in savings. Like, how do we start teaching you all these concepts? Real estate investing, private money lending, self-directed investing, even getting into things like precious metals in the stock market. This is all stuff we talk about. So how do we bring that to you in a normal way? So we put it together. I'm super excited for this training. The first one we're doing in 2025, we're going to do 4 of them. We're going to do quarterly. But the first one we're going to do is going to be January 30th, 31st, and February 1st. So January 30th, January 31st, and February 1st, the Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Put it on your calendars. And if you guys give me about 3 minutes, I'll find the link so you can register for that. But super excited for it. It's gonna be an awesome training.
Love it. Yeah, I miss those. We used to do those virtuals all the time, and then we kind of got away from them, and we were doing more live events this year, and they were fun, but people just love the virtuals from the comfort of their home. So super pumped that Steven and the team are relaunching those and be able to kind of get out some more advanced strategy stuff and wrap it around with even fundamental stuff like we did today. And Craig did a great job. So folks, thank you all so very much for your time today. I think Craig just knocked it out of the park with that. I hope you guys enjoyed it. But most importantly, I know we're at the end, but most importantly is don't cheat yourself. Do not cheat yourself, your family, and your life, and in everything you're doing, your dreams. Don't cheat them. Follow the challenge, stick to the challenge, and keep pushing forward. 10% increase on that savings amount every single month. You set it up, you accepted the challenge. Now follow through with it and do it for at least 6 months minimum. There you go. With that, thanks everybody. We'll talk to you soon.